experimenting is such a huge part of it. And that's when I really started to feel like I was growing as a photographer, was just trying all kinds of things that I had never tried before. And that involves failing most of the time, because most of the time it's not going to work, as we know. And so that just means there's no way around just like getting out there and taking lots of photos and trying different things. And you will start to notice a shift.
Welcome to Pixels, where we explore the heart and art of photography. I'm Beth Bilo, and I'm so pleased you decided to join me today. Pixels is supported in part by the Nature Photography Collective. I'm a member of the NPC team as a mastermind facilitator and a workshop leader, and I have found it to be a truly amazing community of photographers. You can learn more at naturephotocollective.com. I'm really pleased to welcome Meredith Fontana to the podcast today. Meredith is a Denver-based landscape photographer, educator, and founder of Nature Photography Academy. Drawing on her experiences from a career in paleontology and outdoor adventure, Meredith brings a unique perspective to the art of landscape photography. Her focus for the past 5 years has been on capturing the beauty of Colorado's diverse, hard-to-reach wilderness areas and promoting their protection. Meredith's passion for teaching landscape photography stems from a desire to inspire others to explore their creativity and deepen their connection with nature. Through engaging workshops and educational content, she has helped thousands of nature and landscape photographers improve their skills, harness their unique perspectives, and cultivate a greater appreciation for the environment. Meredith and I would love to know in the comments what you found interesting, useful, or resonant in this conversation. Of course, your likes and shares are always welcome, and I invite you to subscribe if you like this content so that you are always notified of future episodes. Now, on to the conversation. Hey, Meredith, I am so happy to be talking with you today. Welcome to Pixels.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, Beth. I just want to thank you so much for having me on, for inviting me onto your podcast, Pixels. And we've been wanting to do this for a long time, so it's great to finally be here.
Yes, absolutely. Been a long time coming. So, but we've only known each other since February, and I really find that hard to believe because it feels like we've known each other much longer. But I'm curious. I always start off the conversation by asking, what's giving you energy today?
What's giving me energy today? Well, what's really been giving me energy today and for the past few months is I got a new truck camper, pop-up camper for my Tacoma. And it's been the greatest thing that I've invested in a really long time. And it's allowed me to go on photography trips in an entirely different way, where I can be on location much longer. I can go to areas I've wanted to spend more time in. And it's been so much fun just working on it, figuring out the solar panels, figuring out how to work out of this container, and for not extended periods of time, but longer than the typical time I was used to being able to be on the road. But it's been a project and it's been a lot of fun. So every day I'm tinkering with it and finding new ways to make it my own. My own.
Awesome. Do you have already plans like for upcoming 2026 of any trips that you want to take in it?
I have one even before then. So coming up in Texas, when I'm going down to Texas pretty soon. So I'm planning on going down to Big Bend. So I've already taken it all over Utah and Arizona and Yellowstone this year. So I've really been enjoying exploring with it. But Big Bend, I'm excited because I'm revisiting these places that I've been many times before. But now I can have a little bit more comfort with the Starlink and all the fun stuff that comes with it, but also just it allows me to be more immersed in the landscapes.
Yeah. So what you're saying is making me remember when my husband and I had a sailboat, and we would sail on Grand Traverse Bay, which is in northwest Lower Michigan. And it doesn't look like it on the map, but it's a huge bay. And I remember the first time we pulled into a marina of a town, a small town that we had only driven to, and how different it felt. it was almost like we were going through a secret back door, and we were seeing it from a completely different perspective. And you used that word immersed.
Mm-hmm.
We just felt more connected by coming in this way that was more integrated with the environment, as opposed to like detached in this car. And that's kind of what I hear from you. Instead of like driving in and driving out, you're actually like staying and probably seeing it in kind of a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can get off some of the main roads with this thing,
Mm-hmm.
go into, BLM land, some relatively remote areas that I couldn't access before, and places where there's no internet or anything like that, and to be
Mm-hmm.
able to you know for example, charge my camera gear with solar power is just
Yeah.
completely changed the game, where
Yeah.
you can spend more time and not worry about like running out of power, running out of
Mm-hmm.
all the things that we kind of need in civilization to keep running and
Mm-hmm.
operating, even as
Yeah.
photographers. And
Yeah.
um, so it's been a very nice transition from the setup that I had before. So yeah, I've
Yeah.
been super
Yeah.
excited about especially 2026, all the
Yeah.
places that I'm excited to explore
Yeah.
with this camper.
For sure. Well, I am I'm interested in when I shared your bio, you were a paleontologist. And I don't know if do you ever stop being a paleontologist once you are one? Is it still part of you?
I, I've never actually thought about it that way, but I do think it is, because
Mm-hmm.
paleontology, at least if you become a professional paleontologist, the common experience that I've found among my peers when I was in the industry and when I was in academia is that you're kind of born a paleontologist. You go through the dinosaur phase like everyone else does, and
Mm-hmm.
then you just never really grow out of it. And
Mm.
so you never reach this point where it's like, well, that's not really interesting to me anymore, because I've always been interested in it. And so yeah, it's interesting to think about it that way, because get me out in Utah around some of these sedimentary rocks, and I feel like I'm all paleontologist. I just can't get enough of
Right.
it. I'll just
Yeah.
nerd out all day on that stuff. But technically, I'm not doing it for a living anymore. So
Right. Right.
it's
But it sounds like it's still a deep part of you. Um,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so how does that intersect with your work as a landscape photographer and educator?
It's the way I see it is it's really an extension of what I was doing before. So as a landscape photographer, I'm going out, reading the landscape, really interpreting stories of the landscape and connecting with the landscape and nature and all the things that we do as landscape photographers. But in essence, what I was doing as a paleontologist was going out into these exact same remote locations, studying the stories from the geologic record, how
Mhm.
ecosystems and landscapes and terrain and um, all of that changes over time, over hundreds of millions of years or billions of years. And the story of how life has evolved through just
Mhm.
studying fossils in these rocks, that how life has evolved for the last, you know, 3.5 billion years. So it really comes back to the stories that we're trying to collect and interpret just from our experiences out in the land. And my mindset is, to be honest, it's very similar when I'm out there. I'm
Mhm.
really just paying attention, maybe not so much to the fossils, but now just the light and the shapes, the forms, the textures, the things that really get me excited in the same way that making a new discovery did when I was out in the field back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Well, I heard you in a webinar recently, and you demonstrated a lot of passion when you were talking about the landscape. It was all about Utah, and it sounded like it really does enrich the way you see and experience, and like you said, be able to tell a story. Do you
Mhm.
find that you are um, is that storytelling showing up in projects or series or in any intentional way, I suppose, in your photography right now?
More so, I feel like it is more and more than it used
Mm-hmm.
to. Before, and I'm sure we'll get into this more, but it was I was very focused on getting, the shot, the iconic
Mm-hmm.
shot, and the landscape and the perfect lighting and the perfect atmosphere. And now I found myself, especially because I do a lot of backcountry photography, I'd say the majority of what I do is backcountry, like backpacking into the
Mm-hmm.
wilderness. And, my collections of images, rather than focusing on one, that getting one shot on these trips that I'm really excited about, telling the story of the trip in maybe smaller, more subtle images that aren't just, you know, aren't necessarily going to stop someone
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram in their tracks, but
Mm-hmm.
as a collection together, there's a narrative among those images that feel a lot more personal to me than they did when I first started getting into landscape photography. So the idea of a story has become more important to me as over the years as I've been a photographer.
Yeah. Well, I want to pull a thread of what you just said. I'm glad you used the word iconic. And because this is something that's come up numerous times. If anybody who's listened to the podcast knows that this is a, kind of a theme that we dip in and out of. But, recently I had this opportunity to go, I had time in, Utah. And I had a choice of what parks to go to. And I have never been to Zion. I had never been to Utah. I'd never been to Zion or any of those other parks. And I really wanted to see it. But, I knew, crowds were a big thing. And I have this, as much as I might want to see those icons and even photograph them, I also have a pull towards non-iconic, trying to make the ordinary more extraordinary or noticed. And so I ended up not going to Zion. I went to Capitol Reef and I had a wonderful time. But what are how do you look at this kind of tension maybe sometimes and and honestly, sometimes it's like an ethical thing, in terms of like going to these icons and using the resources of those icons and contributing to the crowds. So, like, how do you approach choosing where to go? And what do you consider?
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that these national parks in the United States, they're national parks for a reason. They're incredible places. They're
Mm-hmm.
places that I'll remember for the rest of my life seeing them for the first time. They're just, at least in my own experience, the beauty of some of these places, like for example, the Grand Canyon,
Mm-hmm.
um, obviously one of the wonders of the world. But when you see it for the first time, or even every time I go back, it's like you have this visceral experience
Mm-hmm.
that it compels you to create a photograph, right? Rather, even if it,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a professional photograph or it's just getting your
Right.
iPhone out and taking a selfie, as most
Mm-hmm.
people do. Hopefully not too close to the rim.
Yeah, please don't stand close to the edge.
That happens far too often. But just, and I think you've said this to me before when I've come to you advice, because you are I learn a lot from you in terms of going beyond the iconic, the idea of like being so magnetized to just the iconic, or moving away from that and creating things
Mm-hmm.
that are more personal. But I think you said to just get it out of your system.
Yeah, yeah,
And I love that
exactly.
idea, because you kind of do. You can't just say, this is the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life, but I think I'm going to point my camera somewhere else.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
it's
just
impossible.
right. Just get out of your system, capture it just for the sake of capturing something beautiful. I think we forget sometimes as photographers, we're so focused on, especially in the professional world, getting something different and unique, and
Mm-hmm.
that's important. But the simple joy of just capturing sunrise at Capitol Reef or wherever it is, that's just part of what lights us up as being human beings, right? Like just do it. It might not be your most favorite or award-winning shot you've ever taken, but it's part of the experience of being there. And I was actually on a walk with one of my dearest friends yesterday, and she had just gotten back from a I believe it was a meditation retreat out in Crestone, Colorado, led by a very world-renowned Buddhist monk. And one of the biggest takeaways she was telling me about this that really resonated was this idea that when he was teaching was about Westerners always want to take something. They always want an outcome. They always want to get something out of it. And I feel like so much of us approach going to these, or the majority of people approach going to the national parks as, what photo am I going to take from here? What am I going to, what am I going to get out of this? And so to reframe that mindset in terms of how can I develop a deeper connection with this place? And that does mean not necessarily not going to these iconic locations, but maybe exploring them in deeper ways. So, going to the grand overlook and the famous spots, but capturing things that maybe no one has paid attention to before, because that's very possible to do that, even if you're in the same exact spot that has been photographed millions of times. So it's more about connecting on a deeper level to the landscape rather than, taking something from the experience. So again, it's more about this practice, I'd say. I guess the difference, the idea of like Eastern versus Western culture, and especially in yogic traditions, it's the practice of yoga, or what I think of the practice of photography, rather than just doing photography for the sake of getting the image. We have to kind of let go of this outcome, getting the shot, getting the bright angel trail overlook, whatever it is, but at the same time acknowledging, like, get it out of your system. It's incredible there. It's It's beauty.
And I love that idea of like capturing it. It doesn't have to be this iconic, or not even iconic. It doesn't have to be this portfolio worthy image. What matters is that it reflects the awe maybe that we felt when we were seeing it. And I remember, I've said to you, like, I don't consider myself a landscape photographer because I can rarely go beyond sort of documenting the landscape. I still feel compelled to take a photo of it because I think of the reasons you were saying. Like, I was just in Sedona a few weeks ago and I felt compelled to take a photo of the landscape. And when I look at it on my computer, I'm like, but it's not about that. It's more about like the awe that I felt in that moment of seeing
being present with it. Just being there with it, rather than I can't wait to upload this to my portfolio.
Right.
Sell it or do whatever with it. Like that tangible outcome, just like let go of that. It's so important. And it really shifted the way I approach my photography, those big iconic locations. I think it gets you into it, we're drawn to these things, but at a certain point it just stops feeling not very fulfilling because it doesn't feel personal.
Yeah. And so what is your practice for getting into that more personal mindset?
A few ways. One of them, I'd say, I have a very regular mindfulness practice. And I think we were also talking about this at one point. A lot of it's just getting out of your own way. Really going from a more just being in your head approach about photography, which especially as a scientist was very difficult for me. I was and I still am. I still love maps and reading weather and learning about the science of weather and light and planning shoots very technically with all these different scouting apps, and that, while I love that, it's become the smallest part of my photography. I'd say it's really like getting more into my body, more like having a more somatic experience, I guess, while you're out there, more intuitive experience of letting go of the technical aspects of photography. Of course, those are important to learn, but letting it be more of an extension of, I'd say, my consciousness, honestly. Yeah. Just letting it be an extension of who I am and what I see that's interesting or what I feel connected to, just because I feel it, rather than I am thinking, if I put this foreground here, and if I, put this leading line here, and wait until this time of day when the light's perfect, all these things that can make for, a really beautiful and compelling photograph, but it feels more formulaic and less myself. So I guess, to answer your question, it's really tuning in to who you are, just like getting out of your own way, getting out of your head, letting the photography pass the brainstem into the body. And that will lead you to more intuitive, more personal, and more meaningful, in my opinion. When things are more personal and more of an expression of who I am, it feels more meaningful. And that takes practice. That's one of those things that you just can't tell someone, become more mindful, or become
right. Follow your intuition.
Yes. It's these small daily practices that I'd say are completely separate from my photography practice. It's things like, I live in downtown Denver. There aren't a ton of opportunities to be in quiet nature unless you drive up to the mountains. And so creating that space is an effort to be able to, connect to myself, to be mindful, to meditate, to do these things that get you out of your head and into a more creative space.
Yeah. Good advice.
Easier said than done, right?
Easier said than done. Yeah. Like we said, it's not like, go be mindful, go be intuitive.
Yes.
It's something I appreciate how you said, like, it's something you have to feel into. It's not about like intellectualizing it. It's getting in touch, even like noticing how you feel when you get to a location, perhaps. Or as you're going to that location, like, is there anticipation? What's coming up? And the other point you made that I think is so important is about like releasing attachment to outcomes. So incredibly important, because I think that is part of what really enables us to look down, look over here, look over there, look behind us, away from whatever it is that's magnetically drawing our eye in terms of that icon, and being able to see other things, because we're not attached to just like having these blinders on. And that's all not to say, like we were saying, like it's not like we're saying don't get the icons and don't try. And we're not saying don't try to get your own interpretation, your own artistic vision of those icons. I think we're saying like a yes and, go ahead and get it and challenge yourself to keep going.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, to me, I feel like you're restricting yourself if you don't allow yourself to get the icons. It's go for it. It's a yes and. I love that.
Yeah.
And be afraid to fail as well.
Yes.
That's
say more about that. Yeah. Say a little bit more about that.
It's, if you're always focused on getting, with blinders on, being narrow-mindedly focused on getting the shot or the icon and not experimenting. I think experimenting is such a huge part of it. And that's when I really started to feel like I was growing as a photographer, was just trying all kinds of things that I had never tried before. And that involves failing most of the time, because most of the time it's not going to work, as we know. And so that just means there's no way around just like getting out there and taking lots of photos and trying different things. And you will start to notice a shift when you do that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, we hear that all the time in business, right? Fail often, fail fast. And that's how you learn. If you're not failing, you're not growing.
It sounds cliche, but it's cliche for a reason.
Exactly. That's what I would say. Yeah. Cliches are cliches for a reason, because there's some truth to them. And there's something useful in that. And I think, especially once we become competent or even masterful at some aspect of our craft, like, and we've really focused in on something and gotten really good at it, it's vulnerable to say, okay, I'm going to try something different and know that I'm going to fail, or I'm not going to be good at it for a while. And that can be, you can experience a lot of internal friction around that. What would you say? Yeah. It sounds like you've experienced that. So what's a choice you've made to like do something different? And what was your experience of doing that?
I try to do things differently all the time and to see what works. So it's more like, again, coming back to this like intuitive, following your intuition in trying lots of different things that just feel like the right direction, and then just pivoting from, based on how it feels in the moment, if that worked out or not. So, for example, I'm still on this journey of developing a more intuitive style. And when I was so focused on getting some of these iconic shots, or even just like these perfect grand landscapes, I failed almost every time. I mean, things never really lined up in the way I wanted them to. And it taught me so much about myself, and that like, is this what I really want? And we can get into some of this with some of the pivot pixels. Is this really what I want to keep pursuing? Does this really feel good to keep trying this over and over and having
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could go on all day about the things that I've failed in attempting to try, but that's it's in a good way. Like I'm grateful for all of those, and I don't think we're taught that that's okay. In the same way that we're not taught to connect to our intuition, we're just not taught that. And we're not taught that it's okay to fail. In school, it's not okay to fail. So getting over that is challenging, especially if you're, can be a perfectionist, or imposter syndrome, all those things that we talk about.
Well, it sounds like you have, the way I'm going to frame it is normalized failure, which doesn't sound particularly good.
That's my brain. Yep.
But what it means is like, we don't see failure as the end game. We don't see it as an obstacle. We just see it as a normal part of the process.
And it should be a welcomed part of the process. It doesn't necessarily feel good, but does it have to feel good? Like we're always avoiding pain or discomfort, and it's at the end of the day, it's not that bad. I think it's harder to fail publicly, especially when you start putting your work out there and in front of a larger audience. And it takes baby steps as well. And I tell that to my students, like, for example, if you're putting up your first portfolio on your website, or your first bio or something like that, it doesn't have to be this throwing all of yourself out there and your failures for the world to see. Just share a little bit at a time, and it gets easier. It gets easier over time, because it's like, that actually wasn't that bad. I can do that again. Yeah.
It didn't kill me.
Didn't kill me. And
Yeah.
I'm still here. I'm still standing. And it will also, I should add, inspire other people. And that's, to me,
Yes.
at the heart of what so much of this is about, is just
Yeah.
showing other people that it's okay, because
Yeah.
everyone has these fears, and
Yep.
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, that's a good pivot to our pivot pixels, actually, to
Excellent.
learn a little bit more through images what your
Okay.
journey has been like. Yeah. So tell us about this first image.
This was shot at White Sands National Park. At the time, it was White Sands National Monument.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe this was about 10 years ago, when I was going through some stuff in life, and I went on a road trip down to Big Bend, where I'm originally from Texas. So that's always been kind of a place that I love. And this was a stop along the way. And I'm not sure what White Sands is like, quite like now, and I still think they have the gate that
Mm-hmm.
closes the national monument or the national park. And I'm sure it's a lot more crowded now because it's a national park now.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, when I shot this image, I had a permit to go camp on the dunes. And again, I don't know if they still do this, but you used to be able to go backcountry camp out on the dunes and get a permit. It was really easy. And what happened in this particular moment was, so I guess I should backtrack a little bit, because this was shot when I bought my first, real camera. And when I say that, I had no idea how to use it. I bought the camera, I think it was a Fuji XT1 crop
Mm-hmm.
sensor camera. I didn't even know what crop sensor meant. I bought it because I thought it was beautiful, and it looked like the camera that I grew up shooting with, that my mom gave me from the
Mm-hmm.
70s, and learned how to use, in the dark room and stuff like that. And so it just had this nostalgic feeling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, it was just a camera. But it was the first time I had invested in my photography. And this was the first trip that I took that camera on.
Mm.
And so we were standing at the trailhead. I saw the people who had a permit to go camp in the backcountry. And there's this ominous storm coming in. And the ranger comes up to us and says, it's probably not a good idea that you all go camp out there tonight. Like, you can either decide to stay here and, you know, ride out this storm, or you can leave, but I have to close the gate.
Mm.
And so everyone's standing there just trying to figure out what they're going to do. And we were just having the most incredible moment, just like watching the storm come in. And I shot this image during this experience. And it was the first time where I felt like this is something that I really want to pursue further. I felt so connected
Mm.
to this photograph, the moment, the literal beauty of this area. Just
Mm-hmm.
there's so much transition going on in this photograph that's symbolic to me.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I shot this in JPEG, not RAW, because I didn't even know what RAW was at the
Right.
time.
Right.
So for those of you watching this and are listening to this and don't know the difference between JPEG and RAW, there's still hope. Because
We all start somewhere.
we all start somewhere. But this, to
Yeah.
me, symbolized kind of the beginning of that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny, everyone ended up leaving. They all said, yeah, we're not gonna sleep in our tents out here through this. And I stayed, and the ranger allowed me to sleep in my car, which was a Mini Cooper at the time. But he
Oh,
had to
wow.
close the gate. So the storm was insane. I'm so glad I didn't go out there. But
Yeah.
yeah, just like curled up in this Mini Cooper, just alone in that park. I was the only one in the park, and I imagine that's
Wow.
probably something that will never happen again. But
Mm.
this photograph, again, not knowing anything what I was doing with the camera,
Yeah.
but again, connecting to the moment. To me,
Mm-hmm.
this image is so much more powerful because of that than because I knew anything about the technical aspects of
Right.
photography. So
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
the beginning of that.
I love that. And it's like what the images we take before we know what we're doing
Mm-hmm.
do tend to be more intuitive because we don't have the intellectual necessarily to lean into.
Love that point. It's so true. That's when we're not in our heads.
Yeah.
We're,
Yeah. And so how do we get back to that? You know, how do we unlearn some of those things?
and I think that goes
So,
back
yeah.
to those practices to connect with
Mhm.
your intuition. For me,
Yeah.
it's literally just meditating every day. I mean, or
Yeah.
mindfulness. I mean, that's literally, it sounds so like woo woo, and I can't meditate. I can't do any of these things or just sit and breathe in
Mhm.
silence. It's that
Yeah.
simple. It really
Yeah.
is. It's just
Mhm.
impossible. It feels impossible sometimes in the world we live
Mm.
in.
Yeah. Which makes it all the more important.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
Well, let's take a look at this next one. What's the story behind this one?
This is Lone Eagle Peak. Some of
Mhm.
y'all will recognize this because this is a relative iconic shot, I would say, but very difficult to capture because of the amount of
Mm.
work involved to get to this location. And now looking back, so this was a 9-mile hike to get to this location. And looking back, I'm like, 9 miles, that was nothing. That was like, but
Wow.
long enough where you couldn't do it in a day trip.
Mhm.
And especially if you wanted to get it at sunrise or when the light was at its best. Or so I thought back in those days. But this one to me, the reason I wanted to put it in the pivot pixels is that so this was the first time I ever hauled all of my camera gear into the backcountry. And that really shifted kind of what I would focus on for the next,
Mhm.
4 or 5 years. I continue this work with the wilderness photography project I've been working on. Um, but it was the first time I struggled really physically to capture
Mhm.
something in the backcountry that I wanted to capture. And it involved, reading maps and reading weather and all kinds of technical skills that I practiced a lot more back at the time. And this shot, I'm happy with it, but it's not the most personal shot, but it
Mhm.
does represent. I just remember that experience to be such a big shift in
Yeah.
what my focus was and focusing on more backcountry work because I do love. There's part of me, going back to the paleontology thing. I love
Mhm.
type 2 fun, going out just for 5 days at a time and um, essentially, for lack of a better word, like suffering through the elements for a
Mhm.
really rewarding
Mhm.
photographic outcome. Again,
Yeah.
that's shifting a bit, but
Mhm.
yeah, this
Yeah.
and this is in Colorado. This is in the Indian Peaks Wilderness. So you may have seen this peak before. It's very famous out here.
Do you feel like you would still be drawn to do like the backcountry hiking if you didn't have your camera?
That's the best question. I have thought about this a lot, especially because the friends that I go out backpacking with don't carry a
Mm.
camera other than their phones. And it's
Mhm.
never like, it's never the point of the experience. And I'm always somewhat in awe of them, of
Mhm.
how could you go through all of this work and the cold and the rain and the everything hurts and all these things and just doing it for the experience of it. And of course that is part of why I do it.
Right.
The photography motivates me, I'd say, a lot more when it's really, really tough
Mm.
because it's going back to some of these ideas that I'm trying to move away from, the outcome of it. And I'd say
Mhm.
in the last few trips I've done, which I think we'll talk about in the last image, became much less about that, just almost using the camera on these trips as an extension of the experience rather than the point of the experience in itself.
Oh, yeah.
But it would be tough to go without my camera. I sometimes have to make calls in how much gear I can carry, or I generally carry only 2 lenses, and sometimes it's only one. I'll say I'm only going to take one lens on this one. Or I know I've talked to you sometimes. Every time I say I'm not going to bring my tripod, and I always bring it at the last minute, but someone's going to rip it from my hands.
Me?
I think it's going to be you. To just prove that I don't really need my tripod on these trips. That it's just, for the most part, I haven't in the last year. I haven't a couple times, but
yeah,
probably just
that's the growth edge.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's stretching, right? And yeah, I never knew when I started saying I don't use a tripod how controversial tripods are. It's like a dividing line, right? Those who do and those who don't.
It is, especially in this type of photography, kind of the classic landscape, old school type photography.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I thank you for going down that path about I appreciate what you said, like the photography it's an extension, not the reason. You said it more eloquently than that, but you're turning your focus more towards the experience that you're having.
And I will say, one thing that really helped with this is carrying my camera in a place on my pack that was accessible, where I could get to it whenever I felt the instinct to photograph something. Because before that, including on this trip of this image you're looking at here, I carried it buried in a pod, like a padded pod inside my pack, which if you've ever been backpacking, the last thing you ever want to do while you're hiking is go into your pack and start pulling things out. So it's a process to pack your backpacking pack. And so I started carrying it on my chest strap, and anytime I wanted to photograph something, I could take my camera out, and started just using high ISO, and it totally changed the game in becoming more connected to the experience than making everything so contrived in a way, I guess. Like, you get to the location, you scout, you wait for the light, you do all these things. Does absolutely improve the chance you'll get a shot like this. But again, it's like, what matters to you? Is it getting a shot like this, or is it getting something that really means something about the experience?
Yeah. Great point. Well, tell us about this particular pivot.
This one was when I really started to question why I was doing this wilderness backpacking photography.
Your life choices.
So, yes, it is. And again, this one isn't particularly one of my most favorite images. It's a beautiful lake in the backcountry of Colorado. And the night before I shot this image, I went through a lightning storm that just completely shook me to my core, where I just, it was a really life-changing experience, I would say. And it made me question, is it worth it to go through an experience like that, to capture an image like this? That isn't necessarily the most impactful for me. Yeah, it almost feels like a trophy from the experience.
Yeah.
That I was able to capture a beautiful peak and lake at sunrise. I remember just wandering to the edge of this lake. I hadn't slept the entire night because of this storm. And just you're in such a state at that point after not sleeping and being outside, for days. You're not, I'd say you are working more intuitively, but all the technical decisions start to become a blur. You're not really like dialed into, should I use a filter? Should I move to the left a little bit? Should I move to the right? It's just like showing up and capturing something because I made it to this point. And this at this point was when I really, after this experience, I'd say I started to do less of the wilderness photography, but also I questioned every trip if it's something I really wanted to be doing. And I still do that. And I still love it, but coming back to like why it I guess a more eloquent way of saying this is like, you have certain experiences that make you find your why or question your why. Why am I doing this? Why do I wake up in the middle of the night? Why do I put myself in these really dangerous situations? And it's still something that I'm navigating and figuring out, as I feel like we all are. But this shot in particular felt like a turning point in that journey for me.
Yeah. How do you decide?
To go on a trip or
like the level of risk, perhaps that you're taking.
Usually I don't realize until hindsight how much of a bad situation it was. But at the same time, I go out into these locations. I'm incredibly prepared. I have a wilderness first responder certification. I've been doing this for most of my life. I'm very highly trained and skilled in this type of backcountry adventure. And so I don't think there's anything more I could do. And I think women in general are a little bit more risk averse because I mostly hike with men and they just, make very questionable decisions on some of these trips. And the women are a lot more cautious than the men are on these trips. But if there's a location that I feel really excited about because I've never been there, or to be honest, if there's a group of people that I really enjoy their company that are going, that to me is the most important part, because at the end of the day, it is again about the experience, the connection with nature, but also the people that you're with. I mean, to me, that's such a big part of it. It's just, and I know we'll probably talk about that a little bit more, but if everything went wrong and I didn't capture a single image, it would be disappointing. But the experience, the memories I take away from just being completely disconnected from technology, internet, phone, you're like completely isolated from everything that we interact with in a day-to-day, except just interacting with another human being in nature. And that will change your life, really. I don't think many people have experienced that, but it's there for you. It's there for everyone. These are all of our public lands, right? It's just,
if you go do all that hard work and you don't come away with an image maybe that you love, it might be disappointing, but that wasn't necessarily the point. And it seems like hearing you, and I would invite anybody who's listening to this, like, to think for yourself, like, how do you decide, what's most important? And I think for me, it's like, I would be able to say yes if I honestly could say, if I do this and don't come away with a single image that I like, would I still be glad I did it? Or would I feel like it was like, why did I bother, or waste of time or whatever? Like, kind of checking in on my motivation and my why, and to be really honest about it. And I think there's probably nothing, I would say, like, there's nothing wrong if you say, yeah, I would feel like I wasted my time, and so I'm not going to do it. That's perfectly legitimate too. But it's like being intentional and knowing why you're going or why you're not going, and knowing what kind of outcome you want. And that outcome might be the connection that you're talking about, just being in nature. And a photo is like the cherry on top.
And that took time. I did not start out that way. And it's still a struggle, because if you go through all that work and you don't like anything that you come away with from that trip, it can be a little bit heartbreaking. But it's going back to that letting go of the outcome, focusing on the practice of it, the experience of it, rather than the trophy shot, the shot that you're almost like expecting the world to recognize.
Yep.
On social media or whatever. If you go into a trip with the mindset that if I don't come away, at least in my experience, if I don't come away with a great shot that I love for my portfolio or whatever, you're setting yourself up for disappointment every time.
Yes.
It's let me down. And so I had to make a decision. If I really want to pursue photography, as a career, I can't let it just take my joy. I have to pursue it in a way where it's constantly lighting me up and exciting me, rather than constantly feeling like, oh, I'm so disappointed because the weather wasn't how I wanted it to be. All these things that you literally can't control either.
Yeah.
All you can control is showing up in your mindset.
Very true. And I think you've offered us a glimpse at that question around, fear of monetizing something you love, sucking the joy out of it. How do you keep that from happening? And I think what you've just shared is integral to that.
That's one of the biggest challenges I think we face as creators, doing what we love for work, and that it's tough. It really is. I think just to acknowledge that is really difficult is where you start, but it can be done. It really is just a changing your mindset and just continuing to show up. Yeah.
Tell us about this image. This is the last one in the set.
This image, I shot this earlier this year at the Grand Canyon, or in the Grand Canyon, I should say. I did a backpack 5 days, not across, but along the south, not along the south rim, but down under the south rim. And this was on the last day of the trip. And this photograph represents really a shift that occurred over the course of that entire trip, in terms of really finding a more intuitive approach to my photography, rather than I went into it with a much more open mind than I typically did, partly because I was going with some friends, and I was invited to go backpack the Grand Canyon. I mean, how could you say no to that? It's so hard to get a permit to do that. And so just to be invited on a permit was I just immediately said yes, but there was no really like iconic destinations on this other than just the canyon itself, right? But the entire time, this was the first time, I believe this was the first time that I carried my camera on my chest strap, and was just encouraged myself to have an open mind and just photograph anything that I felt an inner calling. You feel that ping, right? That spark to just pick up your camera. And I think we all have that, whether we listen to it or not. And the collection that I made on this trip was really representative of that. And this image in particular was one of my favorites. I think I mentioned this was the last day, and we were hiking out of the canyon, which, if anyone watching this has ever done that before, it's tough because you're going from the bottom to the top. It's like a mile down. So I think 5 miles out, and at least from Havasupai Gardens. And it was snowing. It was like blizzarding and raining and crazy. And but at the same time, it was such a joy. It was honestly exhilarating just to be in that storm. It helps that it's the last day when you're going to get a giant hamburger and a shower. So it's like
exactly.
that always lifts the spirits. But the way that the light was shifting across the canyon, and it was really challenging because the snow was getting on my lens, melting on my lens, and I was just constantly trying to like work with my gear and also like catch up to my group who they never waited for me. And got a very relatable experience if you hike with people who are not photographers.
Right.
And I didn't even, I named this one Revelation. The name just came to me, and I didn't really realize in hindsight that the experience kind of was in itself a revelation of just this shift in the way I was approaching my photography. And it felt good. If you know what I mean, it felt more me. It felt more authentic to the reason I love photography in the first place. And just being out there in the elements, and it when you feel it. You know it when it feels like you're in a place and photographing things that quite literally light you up. And it's one of those things I think is a personal journey. Like it's going to be authentic to you. How you find that, where you find that. Certain landscapes will inspire you more than others. I live in Colorado, but these desert landscapes are really what call to my soul. And I think you can see that in the outcome.
Yeah. Particularly I think in this photograph, and appreciate what you're saying. Like some landscapes resonate and others don't, because sometimes I can feel like I should feel compelled to be in this landscape or to photograph it. I appreciate it. I think it's beautiful, but I'm not feeling that same resonance that I feel in other places, and to be okay with that. It sounds like it's sort of like, well, why wouldn't you be okay? But I think that there is kind of this, like, you're in a beautiful place, and so you should whatever.
When you start getting into the shoulds, you're back in your head. You're back rationalizing, thinking, analyzing, and that is not where yourself is transferred into the photograph. So if it doesn't feel right, then don't. You don't have to. Right. Like it's really that simple. Like just listening to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for sharing all of those. And I noticed how many times a storm played a role in your experience. That's brave. And it almost makes me want to be in a storm, but
no,
not in a car or a tent. But I want to, as we close out, I want to shift gears and explore a little bit about you as an educator. And one of the things that you've done over the past few years is found the Nature Photography Academy. Would you tell us a little bit about what that is, and what people get from being part of it?
The academy it's a place where you can get support and feel supported on your photography journey. That's really what it is. We have all kinds of resources, classes, mentorship, workshops. You can interact with people inside the community, get image critiques, feedback directly from your peers and from me and from other photographers. But really at its core, it's a way to feel supported on your photography journey, and not just supported, but connected. It's what I've seen, how I've seen it grow. I could have never imagined just the way people are supporting each other and helping each other out and giving each other really meaningful feedback it's
Mm-hmm.
just been such a fulfilling experience to watch. And that's really why I created it, was just to help people
Yeah.
along their journey, because I really struggled when I would, like I said, the beginning, the first shot, I didn't know the difference between JPEG and RAW. And so we have folks at that level, and then we have
Mm-hmm.
folks who are much more advanced,
Mm-hmm.
but in the words of one of our members said recently, that's a tongue twister, uh,
Yeah.
that he, even though he was more novice, he found that being around people who are more experienced really lifts him up. And
Yes.
that was something that I really couldn't find in my journey. And passing that along to others, and building this for a space for people to gather and help each other and find meaning and purpose in their photography is central to the
Yeah.
Academy.
Yeah. Well, since you've got people that are at, various levels, I'm curious if there's any particular question or challenge that you find coming up repeatedly, or, is common, and what advice do you give, or how do you respond to that?
I'd say the most common challenge people have, that's across the board, regardless of your level, whether you're a beginner or the people who are the most experienced, is self-doubt, and
Mm,
doubting that they are qualified to call themselves photographers.
yeah.
And I really encourage people to identify with being a photographer, whether or not they just picked up their first camera or they've been doing this for decades. It's there's so much hesitation to feel like you have to meet a certain benchmark to call yourself a photographer.
Yeah.
And the way I think about it is in the same way if you were to call yourself a runner. And so I've been running for since I was in college, and I called myself a runner when I could barely get around the block. And I was a runner when I was running, you know, trail marathons in Leadville. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can identify with that and embody the identity of being a photographer, it will really help you overcome some of this self-doubt that you are
Mm-hmm.
worthy of sharing your work with the world and calling yourself a photographer. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, um, as I'm sure you know about, lots of gatekeeping in the photography
Yes.
community.
Yeah.
And just know that you don't have to pass through all those gates to to follow something that you're passionate about and call yourself a photographer. And
Yeah.
know, like I said, know that your work is worthy of sharing with us, and your passion. And um, yeah, if I could give one message to everyone about that, it's like, I recognize the self-doubt, but don't let it stop you, because that's the biggest thing that people struggle
Yeah.
with, and it stops them from being
Yeah.
creative, from really pursuing this, and feeling like they're good enough to buy the camera, to buy the lens, to,
Mm.
like, they always have to, it has to be justified in a way, or someone has to, you know, wave a magic wand and say, now you're worthy of,
Right. I anoint you photographer. You
yes,
know?
yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that's important is to remember that even professionals, even the people you look up to, have moments of self-doubt. Um,
Oh
if they
yeah.
don't, then their ego might be, a little out of proportion.
Mhm.
But all the ones that I have interacted with have those moments.
Mhm.
And to, again, sort of normalizing that self doubt, like say, okay, this is part of the journey, this is part of the process. Um, and so, how do I move through it and navigate
Exactly.
it?
Mhm. Don't let it hold you back.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
completely a mental game.
Yeah,
Myself included.
yeah, yeah,
The doubts will they'll stop you more than any other aspect of your photography will.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, what I'm excited about is that you and I get to work with some people next year on, among other things, some of those mindset issues, stories that we tell ourselves and whatnot, because we're going to be pairing up to do a Midwest photography like retreat/workshop. I'm so excited about it.
I am too. I am too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so excited to work with you, Beth, and just your vision of the way you share your creativity with the world
Mm.
and encourage creativity among photographers, like stepping outside of what's considered normal and the right thing to do, and the status quo is something
Mm-hmm.
that I've learned so much and been inspired by you,
Oh,
in just our conversations. So bringing that to a group of beautiful humans and sharing those
yeah.
the the wisdom that we've gained with wrestling with all these things, doubting
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, continuing to doubt ourselves, but just moving forward through that doubt. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're going to make a great team, because we each bring different. We share this particular philosophy around mindset and whatnot, but you bring like killer Lightroom and processing skills and composition and that element and the landscape element that I think I was born without the landscape gene. Um, and
no,
because that, then and I'll bring that, that maybe that abstract, and we'll both bring each of those things, right? There's a lot of overlap. Um, but we have a lot of complementary perspectives and skills that,
mm-hmm.
I'm just excited to bring them together for folks. So if anybody's interested in this, it's going to be in the Midwest, because I often feel like the Midwest is kind of overlooked when it comes to photography locations.
Yes.
Um, and and part of our goal is to support photographers who want to find something to photograph no matter where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like to kind of to what Meredith and I were talking about a little bit, to break away from the assumption that we have to travel, that we have to go to the icons and the national parks and all of those recognizable places, to challenge ourselves to say, what can I find in my own backyard? What's right around the corner? What's just maybe a couple minutes drive from where I live? How can I make something meaningful and interesting no matter where I am? Yeah, so stay tuned for information about that, because we're really excited to pair up together for that. And it's going to be a small group. 10 is the target number, the ideal number that we're hoping for. And we're just looking forward to creating something that's a really different kind of photography experience.
Mm-hmm.
Not the chasing the light and running around from one place to another. There's a time and place for that, absolutely. But ours is going to be just a little bit different from that, and more to come.
More reflective and inward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, Meredith, where can people get more of you, and what have you got going on that people can plug into?
Well, I have a couple other workshops on the schedule next year, probably more to come, but all of those are listed on the Nature Photography Collective website in the workshop section. One is in Moab and one is in Hanksville, so that's both Utah locations. So you're getting great geology uh,
Yeah.
educational opportunities on top of the photography. Nature Photography Academy is the
Mm-hmm.
best way to connect with me. That's really where I will engage with you in person, or excuse me, not in person, online, but one on one.
Yes.
Hopefully in person one day, because I
Yeah.
always hope to meet my students in person. Such a great experience. But and then my website has
Mm-hmm.
all the information you need to connect with me via email. Has my, not big on social media, but Instagram, stuff like that. So
Great.
my personal website's probably the best place to do that and check out my work as well.
Yeah. Awesome. And I want to reiterate the Nature Photography Academy. And you have created just like an amazing community. Like you said, it's really wonderful to see how supportive people are with each other. And you provide just a very welcoming, safe space for all those different levels, for all different kinds of conversations of what people are, whether it's a technical challenge or a psychological challenge, like self-doubt, right? You've somehow been able to hold all of that. So it's, it's really wonderful. And I really appreciate what you've built there. So
thank you.
we'll make sure there are links to all that in the description.
I think it's the best place on the internet to connect with other photographers by far.
Yeah.
So I hope folks seeing this, you join us. You give us a try. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Meredith. I'm so delighted that we were able to have this conversation, and thanks for all the wisdom that you've shared and those experiences. And I can't wait to be partnering with you.
I feel the same way, Beth. I'm again so grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you, to connect with you, and to share this journey with you. It's just been such a privilege. So thank you again.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Let us know in the comments what was most useful or meaningful to you, and be sure to subscribe so that you're notified of future episodes. Thank you again so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.